Drishti IAS is pleased to revise its program specially targeting GS Paper 4, which deals with ethics, integrity, and aptitude. In this episode of the program, Ethics, Definitions and Concepts, we will discuss definitions of Code of Ethics and Code of Conduct. Let's begin with introduction. Ethics guidelines attempt to provide guidance about values and choices to influence decision making. Conduct regulations assert that some specific actions are appropriate and others inappropriate. Code of ethics and a code of conduct are approximately similar. They both are used to encourage specific forms of behavior by employees. So, what is code of ethics? These are referred to as values, which behaves like the Constitution with general principles to guide behavior. It outlines a set of principles that affect decision making. When faced with ethical dilemmas or debatable situations, what is articulated in the code of ethics can help guide decision making. It would include the principles of integrity, impartiality, commitment to public service, accountability, devotion to duty, and exemplary behavior, etc. It defines the minimum requirements for conduct and behavioral expectations instead of specific activities. The codes can be disclosed publicly, hence addressed to the interested parties to know the way the company does business. For example, it might stipulate that ABC Corporation is committed to environmental protection and green initiatives. Civil servants are committed to public services. The Code of Ethics will state that decisions of the public servant should be guided by larger common good and to choose the most beneficial solution for the community. Now, let us shift towards Code of Conduct. It is a set of rules, standards, principles, and values outlining the expected behavior for the members of an organization. These are legally enforceable. Code of Conduct sets out the standards of behavior expected of those working in the public service. It outlines specific practices and behavior that are required or restricted under the organization. Civil Services Code, for instance, outlines the civil services core value and the standards of behavior expected of all civil servants in upholding these values. These are designed to prevent certain types of behaviors like conflict of interest, self-dealing, corruption, and inappropriate actions. For example, we have the Central Services Conduct Rules 1964 and the All India Services Conduct Rules 1968, setting up ethical norms to guide the civil services in India. Some of the points included in the Code of Conduct for Civil Services are guidelines on acceptance of gifts and presents by government servants, specific behavior regulating codes, Class 1 officer shall not permit son or daughter to take employment with a company with which she has official dealings or acquiring immovable property with previous knowledge of prescribed authority, and so on. Now, let's focus on the differences between Code of Ethics and Code of Conduct. To begin with, Code of Ethics is general and broad in nature, while Code of Conduct is specific and narrow in range. Code of Ethics governs decision making, whereas Code of Conduct governs actions. Code of Ethics is focused on values and principles, whereas Code of Conduct is focused on compliance and rules, etc. Code of Ethics is publicly available and addressed to anyone with the interest in an institution's activities. Code of Conduct is generally addressed to and intended for employees alone. Within the Code of Ethics, there are a wide-ranging and non-specific, enabling employees to make independent judgments about the most appropriate course of action. Whereas for code of conduct, they generally require little judgment. One has to obey or incur a penalty, and the code provides a fairly clear set of expectations about which actions are required, acceptable, or prohibited. So, how are code of ethics and code of conduct similar? Both are similar as they are used in an attempt to encourage specific forms of behavior by employees. Code of conduct originates from the code of ethics. It converts the rules into specific guidelines that must be followed by the members of the organization. Both can serve as a guide to handle situations like avoiding conflict of interest, protecting the organization's assets, anti-bribery and corruption, and improving work culture ethics. At the end, let us focus on the conclusion. There is a need to set up appropriate institutional mechanisms to promote and enforce the values and code of conduct and to evaluate the extent to which they are incorporated and upheld throughout any organization. In India, the Code of Conduct for Civil Servants does not have a statement of values which should guide the civil servants in the discharge of their duties. There is a need for more generic norms to be laid down by way of accepted conduct for the civil servants as recommended by the Hota Committee report of 2004. The Second Administrative Reforms Commission also recommended drafting a bill on ethics to give Code of Ethics a statutory basis. Now let us look at the questions that have been asked in the previous year examinations. In 2019, the following questions were asked. What are the basic principles of public life? Illustrate any three with suitable examples. Effective utilization of public funds is crucial to meet development goals. Critically examine the reasons for underutilization and misutilization of public funds and their implications. Non-performance of duty by a public servant is a form of corruption. Do you agree with this view? Justify your answer. What is meant by the term constitutional morality? How does one uphold constitutional morality? What is meant by crisis of conscience? How does it manifest in the public domain? What do you understand by probity in governance? Based on your understanding of the term, suggest measures for ensuring probity in the government. Emotional intelligence is the ability to make your emotions work for you instead of against you. Do you agree with this view? Discuss. In 2018, the following questions were asked. State the three basic values, universal in nature, in the context of civil services and bring out their importance. Distinguish between Code of Ethics and Code of Conduct with suitable examples. What is meant by public interest? What is meant by public interest? What are the principles and procedures to be followed by the civil servants in public interest? The Right to Information Act is not all about citizens' empowerment alone. It essentially redefines the concept of accountability. Discuss. What is meant by conflict of interest? Illustrate with examples the difference between the actual and potential conflicts of interest. Explain the process of resolving ethical dilemmas in public administration. In 2017, the following questions were asked. Young people with ethical conduct are not willing to come forward to join active politics. Suggest steps to motivate them to come forward. One of the tests of integrity is complete refusal to be compromised. Explain with reference to a real-life example. The crisis of ethical values in modern times is traced to a narrow perception of the good life. Discuss. Explain how ethics contributes to social and human well-being. Why should impartiality and non-partisanship be considered as foundational values in public services, especially in the present-day socio-political context? Illustrate your answer with examples. What do you understand by the terms governance, good governance, and ethical governance? In 2015, the following question was asked. How do the virtues of trustworthiness and fortitude get manifested in public service? Explain with examples. And finally, in 2014, the following questions were asked. All human beings aspire for happiness. Do you agree? What does happiness mean to you? Explain with examples. What does ethics seek to promote in human life? Why is it all the more important in public administration? With this, we conclude today's episode of Ethics, Definitions and Concepts. Until next time, stay safe. Thank you. To watch our videos in Hindi, subscribe to our Hindi YouTube channel, Drishti IAS.